From 98.1 Classical King and King.org, it's Northwest Focus Live. Good evening. Happy Friday. I'm Dave Beck, filling in tonight for Sean McLean, one of America's great trumpeters, in Seattle this month to play a new concerto with Philharmonia Northwest. This season alone, Mary Elizabeth Bowden is premiering 4 new works for the trumpet, written specifically with her musicianship and stellar technique in mind. Mary Elizabeth plays Canadian composer Vivian Fung's new trumpet concerto with Philharmonia Northwest under conductor Julia Tai this month. Mary Elizabeth has 2 acclaimed solo trumpet recordings out on the Summit record label. She champions outstanding American women brass players as founder of the Seraph Ensemble, and she nurtures young talent as trumpet professor on the music faculty of Shenandoah Conservatory in Virginia. We'll spend the next hour with her trumpet performances of Debussy, Catherine McMichael, Manuel de Falla, and to begin, Mary Elizabeth Bowden's own arrangement for trumpet and piano of a song by Amy Beach called The Years at the Spring from 3 Browning songs. Mary Elizabeth Bowden, along with pianist Lorenzo Marasso on Classical Kings, Northwest Focus Live. Northwest Focus Live on Classical King, and we heard some music by Amy Beach, The Years at the Spring, from 3 Browning songs. Mary Elizabeth Bowden was the trumpeter there, her own arrangement of the piece, Lorenzo Marasso at the piano. And Mary Elizabeth, great to meet you, great to hear you play. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me today.
How was it that you came to arrange and perform this music of Amy Beach?
Well, I love performing vocal repertoire on the trumpets. And when I was researching more songs to perform, Amy Beach has written hundreds of songs. And so I just started listening, and the set of the Browning songs fit really, really nicely for the trumpet.
Mm-hmm. You have formed an ensemble, a brass ensemble made of extraordinary women brass players in America, the Seraph Ensemble. And I wonder if you feel a lot of empathy for Amy Beach, who was this composer who was prohibited really from composing in public. And then it wasn't until her husband died and that she went to Europe and her career flourished. But I just representing women in music, and especially brass playing women, it seems to be an important part of your mission and presence as an artist.
Definitely. I started Seraph Brass about 9 years ago, and I really wanted to highlight women brass players. We are still underrepresented, but there are so many wonderful women brass players all around the world. And so I think it's really important that we have ensembles like this until we see a more even playing field.
Hmm. Did you feel there were barriers that shouldn't have been there when you were coming up as a player?
I didn't think much about it when I was young because I was luckily in a section full of young girl brass players.
Hmm.
I kept tying for first chair with 2 other girls in 5th grade. And so I was lucky in that regard. And also, my first teacher, who was a horn player, when I switched to a trumpet teacher when I was in about 7th grade, he went out of his way to make sure that I had a female role model as my next teacher. So I studied with Carrie Lee in the Chicago area, and she was a really strong role model for me in my teenage years. And so I feel really lucky to have had female mentors when I was younger.
Hmm. And what kind of difference does it make when you show up with the Seraph Ensemble and represent to young girls who are aspiring to play the instrument? I mean, what does that mean to them? What does it mean to you?
I think it's one of our favorite parts of touring when Seraph Brass is on the road and we meet young girls who are picking their instruments in band class and they see five powerful women on stage performing. I think it really does influence their choice of instruments. I know when I was 10 years old, the band director was really encouraging me to pick the flute.
Uh,
But my two older brothers played brass instruments and had the same teacher, and I knew that I wanted to be in the brass family, so
yeah.
I was very, very much like, "No, I will play the trumpet."
That seems to have, persisted through life. You're married to an excellent, trumpet player as well?
Yes, we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary. I'm married to trumpet player David Dash, and we have a lot of fun in our life together, our musical lives together. And we both do a lot of different things, but we come together a lot in recital for two trumpets and piano or string quartet. And now we're starting to play more as orchestral soloists. I mean,
Wow.
as soloists in front of an orchestra as
Mhm.
well. Next, in a couple of weeks, we will be playing a Carmen Fantasia arrangement for two trumpets and orchestra with the Waynesboro Symphony, in addition to Vivian's concerto as well.
Yeah. Congratulations on the anniversary, and, I wanna, hear a couple words about the Debussy that you're about to play. How was it that this works for the trumpet? How did you come to, play this music of Claude Debussy?
So I think I'd like to say something a little bit about pop culture. I don't say this much in interviews, but I find it fascinating to see how much classical music is in people's lives, and they might not realize it. I was watching the first season of Westworld, and Debussy's Reverie is
Uh-huh.
throughout the entire season. If you've seen the show, and I just thought it was so beautiful, and I was thinking this would be great on the trumpet, and then it just seemed like a great coincidence. My husband told me, he was like, "Oh, my teacher has recorded this on the trumpet." His teacher was Bob Sullivan, who is principal trumpet of the Cincinnati Symphony. And so his album that he recorded about 20 years ago, Kaleidoscope, he recorded the same set that I recorded. And
Wow.
I just found it so beautiful. It sits very nicely on the trumpet. And so this is Bob Sullivan's arrangement.
Excellent. We're going to hear it played live here in our Classical Kings studios by Mary Elizabeth Bowden, along with pianist Lorenzo Marasso in the Reverie of Claude Debussy. Northwest Focus Live, and the trumpeter, Mary Elizabeth Bowden. Her collaborative pianist there was Lorenzo Marasso playing that Reverie by Claude Debussy. That was beautiful. Thank you so much for playing that
Thank you.
and for finding that arrangement. And again, it's Westworld. If you're
Season 1, yes.
you're in season 1, you can hear some Debussy as part of the soundtrack. You're here in Seattle with Philharmonia Northwest to perform the Vivian Fung Trumpet Concerto. You gave the original world premiere of the piece with the Erie Philharmonic, Erie, Pennsylvania, back in March of 2020. Talk to you and music director of Philharmonia Northwest, Julia Tai, both about how this collaboration originally came together.
So I knew that I wanted to commission a new piece for trumpet, and I had reached out to the executive director of the Erie Philharmonic, and I started researching composers and fell in love with Vivian's music. And so that's how the project started, and we got orchestras to join, including this orchestra here. And of course, that premiere, March 2020, that's probably a very familiar date to everybody. We performed the premiere, and then
Yeah.
everything shut down.
Right. Exactly. Julia, maybe you can tell us a little bit about how extensive this collaboration is, because it's a lot of different orchestras of different student orchestras, community orchestras, professional orchestras.
Yeah, yeah. So actually, this project came to me through Vivian because Vivian and I met about 5 years ago. We were doing a residency at Banff, and it's a new music residency with ICE Ensemble, International Contemporary Ensemble. And Vivian was there, the resident composer at the time. And I remember that whole 2 weeks she was working with the percussionist to write a piece for a solid block of ice. So every rehearsal, they need to have a
Wow.
new block of ice, and then she was trying to find out what all different sounds you could make from this block of ice, and they have to take into account if the piece is half an hour and how much the ice would melt and how you would write the piece to accommodate that. So we became friends during that residency, and I've always been interested in Vivian's music. She's
Yeah.
so creative and open-minded and just pour everything
Yeah.
into her music. So she told me about this commission project, and I just love the idea of joining a lot of other orchestras. And I have heard of Mary's reputation. I've never had a chance to work with her, so I was very excited about this project. And actually, Philharmonia Northwest, about 5 years ago, we started this initiative called Patrons for New Music,
Hmm.
and we have done this quite a few times. Our first project we commissioned. Brand new piano concerto by PDQ Bach. I
Yeah.
don't know if maybe some of the listeners would remember that occasion. We played with Jeffrey Beagle at Benaroya Hall and brought this new concerto for Simply Grand piano to
Hmm.
life, and it was really fun. And over the years, we've joined a couple of different commissioning consortium to bring peace to life. And
Yeah.
it's a great way to create a new piece of music. Not only we pour our resources together to commission a piece, but also one piece can be premiered in so many different cities.
Right.
Because
It's always getting a repeat performance sometimes that's the challenge, right?
right,
Yeah.
right. So, when you have 10 orchestras joining a commission, then it's guaranteed 10 performances already. And also, from one performance to the next, you might make revisions, you hear it differently. I think there's really a merit in performing a new piece many times.
Yeah. How did you work with Vivian to craft the piece for your personality and your style of playing?
So I met her the summer before she wrote it. We met in person, and I demonstrated some of the trumpets to her. And then she started the piece, and we went through a few different revisions. And the first one, I remember I asked her to make the part more difficult. And then she sent back something that was completely wild, but I'm always up for a challenge. And then from there, then we were able to go back and forth and tweak the parts a little bit. And I think she really captured a sense of my personality that's very driven. And I think the final revision, it feels like it's an extension of my body. It's very interesting how the collaboration worked, because you hear of stories about someone commissioning a new piece and they just give you the piece, here's your piece, and there's no back and
Yeah.
forth. And so this was a really special experience to be able to work closely with the composer, with Vivian, and to really get to know her, and she got to know me. And we're really hoping that this becomes part of the standard trumpet repertoire. And I know that we're working right now on getting a piano reduction done so that can happen.
Yeah. Give us an introduction to, and I wonder if this next piece was written with you and, or colleagues in mind. Catherine McMichael is the, composer we'll hear from next.
So this is a composer that I met randomly when I was living in Naples, Florida. And it was before I recorded my very first solo album. And she met me and told me that she had written a piece years ago in the early 2000s. And I believe that piece only had one performance at the time.
Hmm.
And so I sort of rediscovered it and fell in love with it. And now, after recording it on the album, it has become more and more part of the standard trumpet repertoire. I have many students playing it, and I believe it's the competition piece this year for the International
Oh,
Trumpet
wow.
Guild.
The composer's name is Catherine McMichael. The piece is called Totem Voices, and the movements are Snowy Wolf, Beluga, and Whale Thunderbird. Those are excerpts anyway. It's a longer piece. Anything you want to tell us to be listening for, given those evocative titles here?
Well, I think it's very fitting for this part of the country. She's highlighting different characters of totems. And it's very fitting for the Pacific Northwest. And the first movement I will play, I will play on the E flat trumpet. And a side note, that's the main trumpet that I will be using on Vivian's concerto.
Oh,
And then the second movement I'm playing on the flugelhorn, which is also another instrument you'll hear in the concerto. It's a very dark, lovely tone. And then the final movement, Whale Thunderbird, I will be using the C trumpet.
excellent. We're going to hear Mary Elizabeth Bowden now, along with her collaborator, the pianist Lorenzo Marasso. Totem Voices, three movements from the piece, Snowy Wolf, Beluga, and Whale Thunderbird. We're coming to you from Northwest Focus Live on Classical King. On Northwest Focus Live from Classical King, we heard from the trumpeter Mary Elizabeth Bowden. The pianist in that performance was Lorenzo Marasso, and Totem Voices is the piece by Catherine McMichael. We heard three of I think there's four movements of this piece altogether.
Yes.
And we heard Whale Thunderbird just now, Beluga right before that, and Snowy Wolf. What a great piece of music. I love that. And I love the different sounds of the trumpets. Um, did she speak with you about her, motivation for those particular timbres and the different movements? How does that all come about?
So she did originally write the second movement for flugel, but however, the first movement, her original notation is for the C trumpet. But as you could hear, that it's very acrobatic, and I thought the lightness of the E flat trumpet fit a lot better. So I had a E flat part created for that, which makes it lighter and a little bit more versatile on that. And you can also find Catherine's music on Seraph Brass's debut album. We commissioned a work from her called Asteria, and it highlights three different constellations of female characters, and it's also a really, really cool piece for brass.
And excellent. And we should mention that on you have two recordings out, two solo recordings, and the Totem Voices piece by Catherine McMichael is on Radiance, and you can there's one more movement that people can listen for on the
Yes,
recording.
the
Yeah.
mosquito.
That sounds very intriguing. Is it? I'm a cello player, not a brass player, but how many different horns do you play in the course of your work?
Well, I travel with about 6,
Hmm.
sometimes more. I prefer to have 5 in my backpack, that I can put in the overhead. I had a special case, I was motivated by my mentor, Jens Lindemann. He fit 5 in this case, and so then I bought the case, and it's great, and then I put the piccolo in my quote, unquote, "purse." So I travel with about 6 different horns, including the B flat, C, E flat, flugelhorn, G trumpet, and piccolo, and sometimes I bring my B flat cornet.
Yeah. Wow. That's quite an arsenal of
Yes.
of gear there. So, to name a few of the brilliant composers you are working with, along with Catherine there, working to create new music for trumpet, there's Clarissa Saad, Rena Ismail, Tyson Davis, a composer who makes his home here in Seattle. Anthony DiLorenzo is one of your collaborators. What is it that draws you so strongly to the creation of new music?
I just really want to push the boundaries of trumpet repertoire and not just have the standards be 4 different pieces. I mean, I think they're great pieces, Haydn, Hummel, Aratunian, etc. But I really want to bring new works into the world, especially by underrepresented voices. And I've become really passionate about that. And as Julia was mentioning before, the commissioning process with consortiums gets new music out there. And so with Clarissa Saad's new trumpet concerto, I'll have 12 performances around the country with that work. And joining forces with a record label based out of Chicago, where I'm from, the Chicago suburbs, an album label called Say D Records. Vivian made the connection for me, and recording all of these new concertos with Chicago Youth Symphony, which is my former youth orchestra from when I was a kid. And
Excellent.
so that's been really fun. We're going to finish the album this summer. And my husband is also joining me on a couple of those pieces.
Yeah. I love the fact that in this commissioning group there are youth symphonies and there are community orchestras, and it's you're getting it out there to such a diversity of audiences and patrons.
I love working with young people, and Chicago Youth Symphony sounds incredible. They have a lot of talent there and energy, and you can feel that energy all around you when you're recording with them. And so it's a learning process for them, but then also just a charge of energy. And the conductor, Alan Tinkham, is also a ball of energy as well.
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit more about the role that music played in your early childhood. You mentioned having a couple of brothers who were brass players. What was the atmosphere in your home, and how did your talent get encouraged?
So I'm the baby of the family. My brothers are 2 and 3 years older. So I think part of my motivation was being teased into getting better because they were naturally better than me because they were older. So I was always feeling like I was playing catch up. And we also had a wonderful first teacher who played the horn, and he would bring my brothers and I to concerts all around the Chicagoland area. So I got to hear many Chicago symphony concerts during the famous Bud Herseth's last
Ah, yeah.
years. And tons of brass master classes, and so I was exposed to nothing replaces live music, and hearing that at a young age got that sound in my ear and also kept me motivated. And from there, I went to the East Coast to study at the Curtis Institute of Music with David Bilger, and then
Mm.
at Yale with Alan Dean. And studying with those two teachers also was really, really great because the sound concept was similar to mine and just really reinforced my musical things that how I wanted to sound as a
Yeah.
trumpet player.
Yeah, the tapestry that connects musicians and, it's such a small world, we've mentioned it already, um, but Dale Clevenger, the late great principal horn of the, Chicago Symphony, was the conductor up here at the Marrowstone Music Festival, and, talk about those legendary Chicago brass players, extraordinary. Tell me a little bit about the Manuel de Falla piece that you're about to play, the set of, 7 popular songs and how that works on the trumpet. What drew you to this music?
So my teacher at Yale, Alan Dean, introduced me to these songs, and I in fact still have his original score that I accidentally stole from him at Yale. But now he's given me permission to keep it. It has his handwriting in it. And he really motivated me to look at vocal repertoire as well as Dave Bilger. And so they've stayed with me all of these years, and I just love them. They are just part of the repertoire. I usually end recitals with this set, and I've played them also with harp and guitar, and so they're also flexible with, doing different arrangements. My husband and I also play two trumpets and piano on this piece too. We had another trumpet part, kind of a more improvisatory line added to them. So they're a recital favorite of mine.
Nice. Well, we're going to hear the 7 popular songs. We are visiting with and hearing the artistry of Mary Elizabeth Bowden, the trumpeter, along with the pianist Lorenzo Marasso. They are live in our studios with 7 popular Spanish songs of Manuel de Falla. You're listening to Northwest Focus Live. trumpeter there was Mary Elizabeth Bowden, and the pianist was Lorenzo Marasso, playing the 7 popular Spanish songs by Manuel de Falla. We are welcoming the trumpeter Mary Elizabeth Bowden, acclaimed American trumpeter, concert soloist, recording artist, teacher, new music champion. She's collaborating in the month of February with Philharmonia Northwest here in Seattle in a new trumpet concerto by the Canadian composer Vivian Fung, and directing that performance will be the conductor of Philharmonia Northwest, Julia Tai, who's with us. Thank you, Mary Elizabeth. That's beautiful playing, and I think of those the Spanish trumpeters at bullfights, and that beautiful sound. What How do you shape a performance like that? I mean, what are sort of the sound images in your mind? How do you kind of tap into your imagination to interpret that in the most fulfilling way?
I do listen to vocalists on, and there are some changes that I do make as a trumpet player to make them sound um, good on the trumpets, because sometimes vocal things don't necessarily work with the trumpet,
Hmm.
like certain breath marks and things like that. And also picking the different trumpets for experimenting with color of sound. My favorite song is Nana, and I know that was a song that Defia's mother sang to him as a boy.
Oh yeah.
And so it's just really, really beautiful. And of course, it has one of my favorite instruments, the flugelhorn, once again.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love the sound of the flugelhorn. We had talked to Julia earlier about the idea of using ice as a percussion instrument in Vivian Fung's the concerto that Julia knows from years back. But in this trumpet concerto that you are both working on, what are some of the effects and some of the products of her imagination and working with you that really stand out for you?
Well, there's a really cool cadenza-like section in the very beginning, which is a little bit wild and has some flourishes. And then throughout the piece, there's a lot of triple tonguing and fast tonguing and high notes. And there's a middle section with the beautiful flugelhorn, which kind of relaxes the soul a little bit.
Yeah,
And then my favorite section is also the hip hop section, kind of towards the end.
nice.
Has these really cool rhythms and ba da ba da ba da ba da da. It's really really fun and
Yeah.
playful.
Yeah. So, is that something you request to use the flugelhorn a lot? Because you've certainly used it a lot here today, and I wonder if that instrument has a special place in your heart.
It does. I find myself if I listen to a recital of too much of the same color of sound, it's a lot on the ears, and that's why I love having a variety of trumpets with me. And I feel like the flugelhorn really calms things down. And I know when I was playing the different trumpets for Vivian, she also loved the flugelhorn.
It's a
Hmm.
beautiful, warm tone for
Yeah,
sure.
it certainly is. So, Julia, I wanted to bring you to the mic not only to talk about this particular commission, but after this season, we bid farewell to you as music director of Philharmonia Northwest after 12 seasons, and I want to congratulate you on a wonderful run with the orchestra, and
Thank you.
wish you well as you continue. You're a music director in Missoula, Montana, for the orchestra there.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. But I'm not saying goodbye to Seattle by all means. I'll still be back for concerts, and I'm still doing Seattle Modern Orchestra, and
Excellent.
I'm continuing my musical ties in the city. Although the Philharmonia has been a family to me, and it's so many lovely people, and it's the first job I have out of school, and I was just so grateful to find my musical family
Yeah.
here, and we get to do really cool things over the past 12 years, lots of wonderful concerts, and I will miss them a lot,
Yeah. Yeah.
for sure.
Well, people should know I think you've got 2 more subscription concerts and a children's concert. So,
Mhm.
Philharmonia Northwest, philharmonianw.org is the
Right,
website if people want to go and
right.
find out. But we wish you well, and we'll be seeing you around
Yeah,
Seattle.
thank
And
you.
Mary Elizabeth, what are the projects you're most excited about in the weeks and months ahead?
It's been kind of a wild ride already. I just went on a 9-day tour with Seraph Brass. And after this, I'm continuing to perform Clarice Assad's concerto next weekend with the Chamber Orchestra of the Triangle alongside Brandenburg Concerto Number 2, which is quite a feat. And then the next week after that is with Waynesboro Symphony. I'll be playing Vivian Fung's concerto once again, and also alongside a very virtuosic piece for 2 trumpets and orchestra called Carmen Fantasia alongside my husband.
Yeah.
So it's quite a chaotic but fun month ahead.
Yeah, you talk about all those instruments you haul around. I see on your website a video of you doing the Bach Brandenburg 2 on piccolo, which sounds brilliant. So I want folks to know to go to maryelizabethbowden.com and pick up her recordings, Radiance and Reverie. We also play them here on Classical King. My thanks also to Lorenzo Marasso, who you can find out about his work as a classical music podcaster and conductor and pianist, founder of the Seattle Chamber Orchestra. He's at lorenzomarasso.com. And I'm Dave Beck, in for Sean McLean this week. It's been a great pleasure to hear all this great trumpet playing. David Dodman produces the program. Matt Ogaz is our audio engineer. Nikhil Sarma does video production. David Wall helping out on the video component and is our program coordinator at Classical King. Good night, and thanks so much for listening to Northwest Focus Live on Classical King 98.1 and king.org.